Chapter 1, 1.1, and 1.2, Changing World, Changing Learners. First of all, we're moving from analog to digital, and work is increasingly done online. You are tethered to your mobile device so you can access information anytime, anywhere. You become connected instead of isolated, so you never lose touch, and it moves from generic to personal. Also, we're moving from a consuming to a creating environment and closed to open environment, and open is becoming the norm. 1.2, what is blended learning? There is no single definition of blended. The combination of online and on-site is used. As soon as you introduce online, you have a blended class. Tip, avoid the course and a half syndrome, where a blended course becomes more work simply by adding to, not replacing, on-site activities.
Chapter 1, 1.3, Why Blend, and 1.4, Critical Concepts for Blended Course Design.
Why blend? Students who took all or part of their classes online performed better.
Why blend? Individualized learning opportunities and increased engagement through social interactions.
Concept for blended course design. Face-to-face, individual, or blended of both.
1.5, Time Expectations for Teachers and Students, as well as Section 1.6, Summary and Standards. Teachers and students should plan to adapt their normal learning habits in order to succeed in a blended learning course. But this does not mean that you will be spending more time. It just means the allocation of your time will be differently. For instance, you will be doing on a daily basis, you'll be checking for mail from students and other stakeholders. You will also read and contribute to online discussions or blogs, and you're going to identify students who are struggling to achieve outcomes. On a weekly basis, you'll preview upcoming learning activities. You'll conduct on-site meetings. You'll create, find, and share new materials. You'll provide feedback on student work, and you'll enter scores into an online gradebook, as well as evaluate the blended design and online tools to adjust as needed. In regards to the summary and standards, you need to know that learning outcomes for a blended course are identical to those of the on-site version. However, you also want to remember that blending learning can create opportunities to bridge formal learning to informal learning and encourage lifelong learning habits.
2.1, Considerations for Blended Course Designs. In the best blended learning design, the selection and organization of learning activities and assessments support desired learning outcomes while maximizing the strengths and minimizing the weaknesses of both online and on-site environments. A blended course also sets a rhythm through on-site meetings, but also allows for more individual student variation in the rhythm, depending on the closeness of the on-site sessions.
Some examples of online supplements, section 2.3. Some of the examples is meet as a group. And then they gave an example of an English class where they were given the book, but then independently they had digital media supplements like examples of the author, videos of the author where they lived and grew up, the author reading the material. So there were supplements, and then they had discussions online, but then also when they met once a week, they had discussions as a group in class. And then another example in section 2.4 is the flipped classroom. And with the flipped classroom, there's online at-home instruction, and then when they meet as a class, they practice at school with the teacher, and then they have online at-home quizzes.
Technology 2.5, 2.6 for elementary education teachers. And it begins with the organization. It is on-site and continues to have a lab. It also is online so that there is videos, texting, and audio so that you can also hear and see the teachers' and students' emotions. That is done. It begins with on-site at the beginning of the class, so the students get to know the teacher, and then goes into the online with labs throughout in case they need that individual touch with the teacher. This is done through a teaching model where the teacher and student are both on the computer. The student will make a mistake and goes, yikes, what did I do wrong? And through screencasting, the teacher can reteach, then the student shows the mistake, then the teacher shows them where they made the mistake. So that if they don't need to come in, she can get it done through screencasting. Then they have assessments at the end. They have a pre-assessment where they have a pre and post assessments. In the beginning, they pre-test, pre-assessment, and then halfway through, they have another assessment. Then they have a post-assessment. At the end, they have a portfolio assessment, and bang, they're done. They submit their portfolio through Google. It's on there permanently so they can go back and look at it. After they are finished and it's saved, there are technical requirements such as it must be in on time, and when it is submitted, it must be complete.
3.1, engaging heart and the mind. 3.2, engagement through interaction. Heart plus mind equals engagement.
We can't live without either one. We have to have, a lot of times we forget the heart, but we need both the heart and the mind.
Student to teacher, student to student, student to content.
These are all three types of interaction. Student to content can be textbooks, video, simulations, and you already know the other two.
Human interaction, some pros and cons of that.
A pro is emotional engagement. You build a relationship with your students. A con is sometimes we have a lack of patience and consistency to repeat ourselves over and over.
Section 3.3, Designing Human Interaction to Engage Learners. Online interaction is not constrained by time and space and is thus free from many of the limitations of on-site interaction. There are many strengths and weaknesses associated with on-site interactions. Some of the strengths are human connection and spontaneity. Some of the weaknesses are limited participation, flexibility, time, depth of conversation, pacing, personalization, and personal interaction. There are many strengths and weaknesses associated with online interactions as well. Some of the strengths are flexibility, 100% participation, depth of reflection, pacing, personalization, and authentic learning spaces. Some of the weaknesses include spontaneity, procrastination, and human connection. It is important to have blended learning environments because it combines the strengths of on-site and online learning environments and decreases the weaknesses. It is the best of both worlds. Blended learning environments are essential in order to quickly establish personal relationships face-to-face and to establish personal connections and a sense of community that allows for deep online discussions.
3.4, Designing Content Interaction to Engage Learners. Now you need to make the decision. Do you start face-to-face and then allow online discussions, or do you choose to move from online to face-to-face? The content that you can choose can be either static, like the resources you traditionally use, YouTube videos, Khan Academy, or you can choose to have dynamic content that allows for individual enrichment. 3.5, Summary and Standards. Chapter 3 is all about engaging your students.
4.1, Rethinking Course Design. We looks at the pitfalls of course design. First, too much. Basically, it's saying that there's too much information or creating the work for students by adding online on-site activities. There is also unfocused. Using technology for technology's sake may interfere with student learning. The last is misfit. Focusing a fit or forming a fit where opportunities or will ignore opportunities for transformative design.
When designing a course, you should use a backwards design for a learning-centered approach. Start by writing out the goals and outcomes for one lesson, and then describe the assessments that cover those outcomes, and then list activities that lead to outcomes and prepare for the assessment. After that, you can create your online student workflow
and create online components.
Focusing on the middle stage, the assessments that are aligned will most accurately determine the degree to which learners have achieved outcomes. Alignment helps us make the course more manageable by focusing the teacher on only critical outcomes. It makes it more efficient by limiting the scope of learning activities, and it makes for better learning outcomes by ensuring that what we measure is what was taught.
Section 4.2, iterative development. Progressive iterations can lead to more efficient and effective teaching and learning. This process helps implement faster design and more efficient design and improve the blend over time. Pow! Begin using backward design.
Bam!
With assessment, then student engagement in learning as the teacher facilitates.
Buffo!
Then students are evaluated on learning, and teachers can evaluate the effectiveness of their lesson online course.
Sizzle slam!
4.3 Summary and Standards. In Chapter 4, it talks about face-to-face instruction plus the use of online technology. In this blended environment, on-site instruction is blended and mixed with the online environment of learning. Using the backwards design, teachers start with determining the desired outcomes, then design assessments, then create the activities to teach those objectives. In a blended course, it should be no more work than normal. You choose the best activities to support learning. The resources and activities support the learning outcomes. The learning outcomes are assessed. You plan small and increase your changes over time, and then you evaluate and revise as needed.
Appendix 1, Course Goals and Ease of Communication on page 195. In order to implement blended learning, much of what you need to do is the same as you would do in a traditional classroom. The goals need to be set. They need to be awesome. They need to be the same whether they're on paper, on the board, or on the computer, or on the website. They need to be measurable, and they need to be learner-focused. Very importantly, there needs to be enough time for assignments, which goes in hand with not just adding extra stuff online, but using what you would teach and just blending it together. And finally, ease of communication. Just like in a traditional classroom, everything that you communicate to the students needs to be clear, concise, and logical. You need to make it clear whether an assignment should be submitted online or it should be submitted into the old metal basket in a more traditional setting. You need to have a rubric. You need to have rubrics that are clear, concise, and logical, just like your expectations. You need to have good contact info so they can reach you online or in the classroom via traditional ways.
Okay, also part of Appendix 1 is pedagogical and organizational design and engaged learning. The blended course organization, as a review, needs to have a syllabus, it needs to have an outline, an introduction, summaries, also the subject matter split into chunks, feedback and new information, online activities, and also on-site activities. There are lots of ways that we can engage our learners by, for example, case studies, asking questions, reflective activities, stories of human conflict and emotion and communication.
In summary, collaboration and community become very important. They are encouraged. They allow privacy for the student, and online space where learners can share and discuss. Assessments need to be frequent, of various types and kinds, and related to the learning outcomes. They need to be on-site and online. Feedback needs to come from a variety of sources in a timely fashion. It needs to clarify incorrect answers and elaborate on correct answers. It needs to be dependable feedback from the teacher. The end.